So this morning, before we kicked off, I was looking around. Now we got Vaughn Hokanson on. Is the last name pronounced correctly?
Yeah,
Hokanson?
that's right. Hokanson.
Hokanson?
Yep.
All right. And he's running for Senate District 20 here in Utah. And so I jumped on old trusty Google and looked around to see if I could figure out exactly where District 20's borders were. And I made it to page 5 before I gave up. So lay out where the borders are for us real quick.
So that's interesting that you bring that up because there's been a lot of confusion around that. When they redistricted, they didn't update the Senate website, and it shows still my opponent as being in District 26. But when you go and you look at the candidates who are currently running, I'm listed as just District 20. So I don't want to be like held feet to the fire for having it exactly right either. But what I'm sure of is that it encompasses Heber and then east of Heber into like Vernal and that area out towards the Colorado border. And so I live in Heber, and one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is getting to know the rest of my district. So I'm not a longtime resident of Heber, but I have family roots there. I have a great grandma who was raised by a widower who had 8 kids, and they would be out there in the wilderness during the late 1800s, surviving through all the cold and misery of Heber as a little family. And so my grandparents are buried there in the cemetery, and a bunch of my other ancestors. So when my wife and I moved back in 2020, it was like coming home to some of my family roots. So Heber is where my heart is in terms of the district, but I'm really excited to really fall in love with the rest of the district. And I do believe that I also encompass some of Park City. So those are really the important pieces.
So I've got a question, a technical question in terms of all these political positions. You're running for Utah Senate District 20.
Correct.
There's state representatives, and they're divided into 2 different categories, correct? One is Senate, and the other one is
House.
And what's the difference in Utah, the state side? What's the difference between the 2?
So I think the biggest difference, other than the title, is that there's 2 big differences. Just like at the national level, there's fewer senators. So senators are representing larger, geographical areas, and then a senator has a longer term than a House rep. So my term would be 4 years, and somebody elected to the state House of Representatives would only have a 2-year term. So
isn't it? It's kind of the way to break it down between Senate and Representative or Senate and Congress nationally is the initial design, and I know we've gone away from that, is the senator represents the geographical organization, and the representative, the House or the Congress, represents the people.
By numbers of demographics, that's correct.
Yeah, it's but we went to a popular vote long before Utah became a state. So
and I think the founders really wanted to, balance the protection of minority population areas, and that's why, if we, at a national level, if we didn't have the senators representing the states, we would have every law would be dominated by representatives from California and New York, all the big populous areas. And so the senators give a voice to some of the smaller communities. And I think that's even reflective of, my district, because I'll be covering small towns, and Heber and Park City are small. And then the area out in the basin, that's even smaller by a long shot. And I know that when I talk to my opponent, that's one of the things that he feels like he's done a really good job of, and I'm sure he has, is getting to know those small towns. And he's from out in that area. And so I think that's something I take really seriously, is the opportunity to connect with those smaller areas in my district, it's not something that I can claim to have a lot of experience with yet, but it's something I'm very committed to.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the common argument. Not to make this show all about political semantics. Tell us about yourself. Let's get right to the meat and potatoes. Let's let people get to know Vaughn.
Sure. Yeah, I am the oldest of 11 children.
Holy.
My ancestors settled Star Valley, Wyoming. That's where Hokanson comes from. They immigrated from Sweden in the 1800s, and they dug sod homes in Star Valley. And so I come from really like hardworking, hardy stock. My grandpa was a dairy farmer. My dad was a dairy boy. Like he paid for his college and his mission and stuff, milking cows in the morning at 3 a.m. And so he raised me to work hard, and he fell in love with my mom right after he got back from an LDS mission. And they decided that the most important thing in their life to them was raising a big family. And they set out intentionally to have a big family, and they succeeded. And so I'm the oldest of 11. I have 5 younger brothers and 5 younger sisters. And really my story in terms of politics is one of just coming from a family that loved the freedom of this country, loved my dad would sit me down on my knee and tell me stories about the Revolutionary War. His library was like the real George Washington, the real Benjamin Franklin. He loved to read about the founding fathers and the Constitution, and he instilled that in me. And I was a Boy Scout. I got my Eagle Scout at 18 in a troop in Nebraska, where we had a whole bunch of different denominations, different age groups. So my scout troop had like 11-year-olds to 18-year-olds. And so all through that formative period, from when I was a little boy all the way until I got ready to go out on my own, I was just raised in this very liberty-rich, Constitution-loving environment. And I also was homeschooled. And so I had this, kind of built-in freedom mindset of, I get to direct my own course of life. And it was as I got older and got into college, I realized, the rest of the world isn't like my experience and upbringing was a little atypical. I thought I was a normal, everybody's normal in their own way, but I thought there were a lot more people who had an experience like mine. As a kid, you think as you grow up, everybody's like me, but you get to, young adulthood and adulthood, and you realize not everybody has had these experiences and this exposure to the kind of things that give you an appreciation for freedom and liberty. And so I started back about 2008 getting involved politically. I was a little bit involved in the Tea Party movement in Nebraska. And when I say a little bit involved, I wasn't organizing things, but I was going out to rallies and speaking a little bit. And I really developed a passion for education because of my role as the oldest of 11. I helped with all of my siblings' education as a homeschool student. And I realized that, the balance between the benefits and the liabilities to a public school versus homeschool versus private school education system is something that I wanted to kind of try and bring together, because I missed out on some things being homeschooled. And I also don't agree with like some of the aspects of public schooling. And I think that we can do a better job for future generations by, making our public, private, family, systems work better for the student. And so I set out in my undergraduate studies to prepare myself to be an education entrepreneur and start schools. I worked in a micro school in Idaho during my undergraduate and taught, pre-K through 5th grade as a capstone to my bachelor's degree, which is English philosophy, child development. And I'm also a gymnast, and I coach gymnastics I've continued to coach. I still coach my kids. And I right before getting more involved in the law, I was running a couple of gyms. And so I still have my back handsprings, can walk on my hands. In fact, maybe at the end of the podcast, I'll pop a handstand and walk
I want
around
to
my
see
house
that.
for a little
I
bit.
do want to see that.
So I mean, I've been very involved in education, and then I realized that that all these obstacles that the parents have who want to have something better for their kids, like they can't afford a super expensive private education maybe, or they want their kids to have the socialization and the sports experience, and so they want to do public school for that reason. Anyway, I saw all these things that had to do with the education system that involved government and policy. And I realized, I could run my own school, and I could start a small school with my wife, who's also an educator, or I could try and impact broader systemic change by getting involved in government and law. And so after a lot of prayer and soul searching, I decided to take a pause on full-time education and coaching and go to law school. And that was in 2016. I graduated in 2019 with a law degree from an Ohio university, small university in Akron, Ohio. And I also did a visiting semester at BYU Law because I've always been a big BYU fan. My dad was a student at BYU, and I've always been like a Cougar fan for the sports teams. But more than that, I wanted to get the network at BYU Law so I could come back to Utah, because this is where my heart is, and this is where I was born and raised. This is where my roots are. So I don't know. That's kind of like the broad spectrum. After law school, I ran several education companies, a tutoring company, a couple childcare centers, helped run a micro school, and a tumbling gym and a trampoline park. And then it just got to be where I needed to focus on the reasons that I went to law school, which was to affect policy. And so I've transitioned more into the law, and now I'm running for office.
So what do you think you would enact? Because I agree, our education system has some in some areas it's falling short.
Well, and I think COVID really exacerbated that. Like a lot of people became
and shined a light on it.
Yeah, it did.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the COVID shutdowns and kids getting sent home and told to go on Zoom in the family room, and then the parents got to hear some pretty questionable things that made them pop their ears up. I think it was in Tennessee. A parent overheard a teacher saying, "Don't tell your parents what we're talking about. Make sure they're not in the room." Regardless of what comes after that, the lead off to that is kind of shaky.
You know what really bothers me about the whole thing is, so I've always been an advocate of me being able to see what's going on in the classroom, some sort of video technology or whatnot, because I pay for that crap, right? Mm-hmm. It's my tax dollars. And I know what happens when you close the doors, especially with the malleable minds of these mushy little imaginations of kids and stuff. But whenever I try to say something to a representative about, hey, let's videotape what's going on into the classrooms, we get this pushback like, oh, we can't show video of the kids. I mean, that's like the protectionism of this molestation of the mind curriculum they got going on. And if we're worried about our kids' education, why is my opinion not valid? And it seems like I get cock blocked every time I try to push that opinion. And I would like to know, Vaughn, what would be your opinion about me having the ability to see what's going on in the classrooms, at least like maybe 10 days later or something,
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and I wouldn't jump into it without acknowledging that there are privacy issues to recording kids and having that kind of viewership accessible to just about anybody. But as far as a parent, I feel like there should never be a school in the country that doesn't have an open door policy to parents. And in terms of your ability to participate or understand or see what your kids are being taught, absolutely I endorse and support every parent being able to know what their kids are being taught. And, as far as how that should be mechanized, that's a good question. And I'm not sure if I have all the answers, but I think, David, it'd be a great thing for you to just go and sit in the class. But the problem is the teacher going to, be accountable when you're sitting there in the room in the way that they would be if there was just an ongoing record. And I don't think so. Probably there's going to be sometimes a teacher's going to teach differently. And I can say that because I've been an educator. When you're being observed by a parent,
or a principal or administration from the school district. I mean, it's just like any job. Dave's a safety guy at work. Dave has never seen how anyone at work actually works. Never seen it.
Oh, stop it.
Never once. He's never once experienced what a guy turning a wrench on his own would look like. He's never seen it.
Ask your father that question.
I have, and
whenever I go into his father's shop, he always tries to start talking to me, so my ears bleed and I leave. But
that's my dad. You've seen my dad when in his natural habitat, which is having a conversation with people.
So I guess, bringing it back, I think in terms of what kinds of policies I'd like to see change in education, and that's, at the root of what you're asking, I would like to see a system of education where parents and educators work more in tandem.
Yes.
And where there's a lot more communication, a lot more transparency. I don't know exactly, like I said, the mechanisms, but I think that it needs to be a dialogue that we have more. And I also think that we need to get the federal government out of that whole conversation as much as possible.
That's hitting the nail on the head. Since the Department of Education was started up, every year the price of education goes up, and every year the value that the community gets out of it goes down. And that has been a constant, and that's not just us. England experienced the same thing. France experienced, every time they went national with their education, the value went down. Another argument, I don't want to go hard at the teachers, because if even a teacher's teaching
I think teachers my wife taught kindergarten in a Title I school, and it was massively difficult, and she was such an amazing advocate for those kids. I think teachers, the vast majority of our teachers really care. I think we're getting some people in there now who are not good teachers because we've driven out the good teachers by not giving them the kind of support that they need. But that's another whole conversation.
It's not just that. Even the teachers that are teaching things that's antithetical to the community, say they're teaching communism or whatever. We're going extremes like that guy out of California. Mm-hmm. He's still teaching what he believes. And I think the issue we run into is that we have our education schools, our schools that teach the teachers, have proposed a method of teaching activism prioritized over curriculum of the 3 R's, writing,
and that is being
arithmetic.
And that is being tamped down from a federal level. I don't think that's the states who are saying we want to do that. I think
it's not the state, it's the colleges. The actual colleges are teaching that because they were taught that, and it's just it's a continual thing, which means I think we need to figure out how to draw teachers from a more diverse section of the educated industry. So we need to try to figure out how to draw in teachers, maybe make an incentive for, like, say, a lawyer that says, hey, I want to take a sabbatical from practicing law for a year, and I'm going to go teach this class at the school, a history class or a language arts class or something like that. It doesn't even have to be law, but he can say, okay, I can take a cheap and easy test, get my certificate, pass the background, and I can go teach for a semester or a year and bring in a more diverse field, where right now all of our teachers seem to be focused from the same group of schools, the same ideas that are coming down. And I think what that's doing is that's not allowing a plethora of ideas into our schools. And then it's producing kids that paint their hair green, fall on their knees and scream when someone gets elected president. And that's a failure of us.
Yeah, we really have moved away from teaching critical thinking, how to read and analyze a variety of different information sources, how to do mathematics to the point of, you know, reasoning logically from a set of data to a conclusion, and we've made education about, you know, regurgitating a narrative and about conforming, and those are completely polar opposites from what a real valuable education enables a child to do, which is to think critically, to gather information for themselves, and to make decisions that are based on facts and based on reality and based on observation. And it really, really bothers me that the system of education that we're seeing perpetrated on our children is leaning more and more into radicalizing them to an agenda. And I, you know, I don't, like I said, I don't think that that's all about the teachers, but you're right. It's about the system that the teachers are in, that they're being asked to perpetrate. And
Well, they're being taught that. They truly believe that because they were taught that. And the
Right.
teachers who taught them were taught that. We're going back generations. I mean, we're going back. Well, I graduated school 48 years ago or 28 years ago. So,
Well, the Frankfurt College or whatever it was kind of pushed all the commies over here in the States, and then
yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
I mean, that is historical record, but it's also, I mean, this is stuff that's been studied since the 90s.
But you know, even more concerning is this movement that we have right now to radicalize our kids to the point where they are taught in elementary school to question their gender, you know, to question, you know, fundamental aspects of their existence that, like, even when I was a kid and things were kind of crazy in education, which is why my mom and dad pulled me out of the school and homeschooled me, would have been considered absolutely inappropriate and radical.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now this is where we're at. We're at a place where, you know, I was coaching kids in gymnastics in Ohio during law school, and they were coming in, and it was the big trendy joke to talk about, you know, am I a boy or am I a girl? Should I, you know, gender transition? And this is just a couple of years ago, but it's exponentially increasing. And I have a lot of empathy for people who have LGBTQ plus whatever, you know, experience, and that's the life that they're living. I empathize with that, but I do not agree that it is appropriate for that to be something that we're categorically mainstreaming for all of our elementary kids. You know, like that's just way across the line.
Right.
I don't think sexual talk at all should happen with any student under. See, my argument with it is parents are forced by law to send their children to that building, and you can homeschool, you know, but then you're forced by law to, you know, whatever. But it's
Well, and not only that, but it's inaccessible. I mean, the amount of sacrifice. I mean, look at the cost of housing in Utah.
Yep.
Like 75 to 80% of families in Utah need two working parents. The only reason my kids,
You think it's as
are in
low
the-
as 75 to 80%?
I don't know the statistic. I'm estimating.
I think we're touching 90% easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing homeschooling is cost prohibitive. It's hard. It takes a lot of effort. So sacrifices have to be made.
And the system seems geared to prevent you from taking that
Correct.
option.
Well,
Correct.
look at when you was at homeschooled back, 10 years ago or whatever.
In the 80s, I was pulled out, like 90. I was born in 84. So it was like 90 when my mom decided to homeschool. And it was cataclysmically difficult for her. She was she was attacked and told,
And
this
for
is the worst
you-
thing you could ever do. And
you were probably looked down upon, probably thought as a weird kid, everything else, even though you probably come out of it as a better, stronger, more hardier individual in your life.
I hope so.
Well, I'm sure you did. I mean, the studies are out. Homeschooled kids have better communication skills. They have better adapting to working with authority skills. They have better problem solving skills because they had to. They weren't put into a sheep pen and barked around and you know, I don't know, put ear tags on whatever livestock. You know, they were,
You do learn how the world works much quicker.
yeah.
And you have to adapt to that.
But you know, so I don't want to, and going back to what Dave said, there's other ways. I mean, we don't even have to have a camera in the classroom.
You can do audio.
We could just audio up every teacher. Every teacher goes in, they put on the little lapel mic, do an audio check with the principal to guarantee it's on, and it just stays on the whole time.
But you know what? Let's not hammer education into the ground for this interview. Give me four more points.
Yeah, what are
you
some...
want to focus on as a Senate representative?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I do love education, and it's probably the biggest thing I'm passionate about. But there are a lot of other things. So I think that one of the biggest issues that we're facing, and it's super apparent with the current crisis in our economics and in our geopolitical situation through Russia and China and all of the things that are going on in the world, is that energy is incredibly important. And I just feel like it's absolutely ridiculous that Utah hasn't been given a green light to progress on its own energy independence more. We have so many natural resources here that would vault us into the elite energy producers in the world if we would just get our government to agree to finding ways to do it appropriately. I think there's so much miscommunication and misunderstanding about energy, its value, its production. I mean, I'm all about finding ways to get rid of our smog, right, in Salt Lake and everything, and have good air quality. But I don't think that means we can't use fossil fuels, oil and coal and all that. You know, like there are so many ways that we can generate energy that will sustain Utah into the future and make us independent. I think that if anything, this current crisis should teach us we need to be putting a state level energy protection plan around our communities, so that if the world around us continues to collapse, we have what we need here to be sustained. And I'm an agricultural background. I had cows and chickens and dogs and all that stuff growing up. I've hunted, I've done things. I know where our food comes from. I know how it gets to our table. And I understand the importance and value of our agricultural in the state, and for finding ways to utilize the land that we have here to provide for our people and to sustain us. And I think a lot of senators and representatives come from this more established, middle class background, where they weren't, growing up with very little. I mean, I'm the oldest of 11. I think my mom and dad averaged probably like $60,000 or $70,000 a couple of years, and they probably averaged like $40,000 a year for most of my upbringing with 11 kids, So we canned and we gardened and we built fences and we did all the things that they used to do, 50, 100 years ago to survive. And I'm not saying that the world is going to collapse around us to the extent where we all have to have our own, food from our own garden or whatever. But I do think that the state should be thinking about systems and trade ideas. And I mean, Utah is a state. What is a state? It's a community with an organized government that's supposed to help protect its people to have the necessities for a prosperous and happy life. And I think we're so busy sometimes on a state level playing this national political game and making deals and finding ways to get this special interest or that special interest involved in the state, that we forget that if we work with the people and the resources and the systems and the things that we have right here in Utah, we could let the rest of the world just go its own way, and we could actually have 99% of what we need or want right here in the state of Utah. We talk about manufacturing in the US. Well, what about manufacturing in Utah? What about, there's a lot of great companies, and I've worked with some of them. I worked for Steve Peterson, who, and my light in my office, I'm going to go turn it back on for you guys.
While he's away, Dave, I want to mention, so he's got ancestors with 11 kids and 8 kids and all that. How many kids does your wife want? And does she know?
We have 3 boys. I got started a little bit late. I got married at 29, and I don't want to have kids past 40.
So you're going to end up with only 9 kids. Got it.
We're probably gonna stop at the 3 right now, because my wife's got some health issues. Actually,
I don't think your wife understands your genetics at all. At all. She's probably getting pregnant as we speak by you. You're in a different city and everything else, and she has to be very careful around you because you come prolific genes. 11 kids. Man. Anyways,
we plan on having 7, 4 through adoption, and 3 biological.
Okay. Plan, so fitting kids will be what comes out of it. I dig it. So yeah, I agree. We need to now. Doesn't the nation control the ability to set up, say, refineries and things like that? Those are all on a national control through the Department of Energy. Again, sleaze bags in DC.
Vaughn lives in oil country.
He lives in extremely in oil country, and your district often feels the crunch of the boom and bust of the energy industry more than anywhere else in Utah.
But does our oil? So I see these oil trucks going back and forth all over the highway. How does our oil system work, Vaughn? I mean, like we get it out of the ground here in Utah. Do we process it in Utah and use it in Utah, or do we sell it to China or something like that?
Some of it.
No, it's a great question, David, and frankly, I would have to do significant research, and as a representative will do a significant amount of research on just exactly these questions. I don't claim to be an energy and oil production expert, but I have the ability to say, if we're not doing the refining here, how do we, one of the things I love about Jason Preston, who I'm helping run for national office, is the idea of creating this synergy between national representatives and state representatives, so that our congressmen there at the federal level can fight for our right to do things at the state level. And I really would see a part of my role as a senator to be building very strong working relationships with our representatives in Washington to pull power back from the national level to the state level and create synergies and put in place laws that will allow us to have more control over our federal lands. Well, stop having them be federal lands, first of all, and get them to be under control of the state. And then, do you think that if we got the administrative agencies to get out of the way, that we couldn't get investment to get our own refineries here? That of course we could. There's tons of opportunity and money to be made in bringing some of those things back, so investors would come if we got out of the way of the problems. And maybe we need a nuclear plant. Maybe we need an oil refinery somewhere where it's not going to cause pollution for the majority of the state, but it's still localized enough that we can get oil flowing here in Utah.
Well,
I think that
North Salt Lake does have a refinery.
I know it has at least one, and I don't know.
I think it has
where
two.
the oil goes
and where it goes after. And honestly, that I'm not fuzzy-eyed enough to think we can be insular. But back to your comment about how you'd like to get national and state politics to work together, we just got to do away with the popular vote. Our senators should be elected by our representatives in the state. That's how it should be. Our senators used to be elected by just the representatives, and they did the popular vote, which made it so that the people quit paying attention to the representatives of their state, and all they cared about was what we sent to the swamp. And so we need to do away with the popular vote on senators. Senators gets elected
Well, and
by
that
the
brings
state.
me. You asked for 3 issues, so getting our own Utah independence in a lot of areas, energy being one of them, our education system, working on that. The other thing that I feel really passionate about is protecting our political systems. Our political systems are under attack. One of the examples of that is the Senate Bill 54, which people have been talking about for a long time since it came about. I think it was 2016. I was a county and state delegate for the Republican Party in 2016 in Weber County. I was living in Ogden. I had just been married for less than 2 years. Had a brand new son on the way, and I was a delegate and went to convention for my county and my state, and I realized, like, this is a messy system, and it takes a lot of work to make sure that people are truly being heard and represented appropriately. And the fact that we went around the people and we created a way for big money interests to put our politicians in place is, I think, potentially catastrophic to our way of life here. If we continue to allow our representation to be dictated by deep pockets, we're going to see the majority of the goodness in our economic and political system evaporate, because the big corporations, the Amazons and the Walmarts and the whatevers of
Or
this
just wealthy
world are going
people.
Teachers
they're
union.
gonna run over the mom and pop communities that we have in this state that are the lifeblood that creates good, strong, working communities. And
Or just allows people to live free.
the only pushback that we have against that is a functioning, secure, representative, we the people based political system.
Yep.
We have to
Excuse me
have.
for a second. I got Romney. Sorry, man. I get
No,
in my throat.
And it's so sad because, I mean, Romney, I'm LDS, right? I voted for Romney when he ran for president. He had great name recognition, but what he did to move into our state and just use his money, use his national name brand to circumvent the caucus system, not really listen to the people. I mean, I wish he'd come back and give that Senate seat back to somebody who really
Deserves
is listening to the people. So,
Yeah, it would be nice to see a Utah. But then again, we're looking at this. We're both we live out in the rural areas. I'm a rural kid. I grew up rural, lived that way all my life. Dave is a rural kid from a foreign country, lived that way all his life. I mean, where he's from, it's urban to me, but it's still rural.
We did cow tipping where I was. Do
Yeah.
you guys do that here?
I took my city friends out and told them that cow tipping was
yeah,
a real
we
thing.
did the myth of cow tipping as well.
I'll never forget the like 11:30 walk with my friend from an eastern city who I met in college, out walking through the cow field, and he walked into an electric fence while we were.
Oh, that's the
going-
worst. I remember I was dared to pee on one when I was a kid.
You did not.
I didn't, but someone else did.
What we do is we'd hold hands, all 11 kids, right?
Jeez.
And then one would grab on.
See how far down it'd travel? Yeah.
That's-
We did
Sorry.
things like that. We don't need to talk about school trips. But
Memories.
I think Romney represents, and as much as I say he doesn't represent Utah, he does represent the people in Salt Lake City and the denser areas of Provo and Ogden. And he actually represents those, I choose to call them progressive Republicans. He represents their ideals, their wants, and
That is true.
their dreams. So he does represent part of Utah. I would like to see, I think it doesn't matter what kind of radical representative we get in there if we can follow the Constitution. I think that's the protection for it. If you follow that, we need to have the 10th Amendment that allows states to make their own economic and provincial decisions for themselves. And all our decisions right now seems like if someone in one state says, we need to get this done, I'm going to go to DC and make it happen. That's not how it should be. Things need to be done on the state level. We need to be able to try and fail or succeed and copy
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think, that gets to the heart of why I'm stepping up to run, in that, I met Ron, my opponent, just at caucus. I think it was a week and a half ago. And he seems like a really nice guy. I don't want to be a mudslinging kind of person. I don't really have anything against Ron as a person. But what I do want is I want to go up there to the state capitol, and I want to shake it up a little bit. I want to pull back the curtain. I want to remind the guys who are sitting in those Senate seats that they need to connect with their constituents at a deeper level, and then they need to stand up and plant their feet and be a little more aggressive at representing their best interests, and not just doing what is the thing that will make the best deal for whatever, and I can't claim I've not been a politician before. I haven't been in those meetings, but what I do see is what I've gone up to the Capitol and observed this legislative session, and that is very arrogant representatives not crossing the wall from, not the wall, there's a little divider, right, from where they sit to where the people who are coming in to push for the legislation that they want. I don't see enough crossing of that barrier. They need to really be talking to people in a way that's deeper, and they need to be listening, and then they need to be respectful and kind. And I think it goes both ways. There can be people who get a little too fired up, but I'm really uncomfortable with a representative trying to shut people up, especially in
the guy that got tossed out the other week for a sticker.
Don't test the metal of the chair.
And I'm shocked, honestly, that happened, and that those representatives couldn't, instead of pausing the meeting and getting some policemen to come, or some state troopers to come in and pull somebody out, why couldn't they cross over and just say, hey, you guys, we really care about you. Let's shake your hand. Let's listen to you. Can we set up a meeting after this where you can really vent to me and I can take notes, and then can we slow down all these bills and actually do things that are impactful? I don't know. I feel like the whole thing seems like this system that's out of control, and it's out of touch with the needs of the people.
Could you silence your phone real quick? That ding is coming across.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you're good. No, I agree. I think the issue is that we're in a dominantly red state, so everyone sitting in those seats have been in those seats a long time, and they felt fairly safe. So I think the idea of primarying them, and we need to quit voting in incumbents. Don't let people feel safe in that seat, because a senator who did not feel safe in that seat would not have done that.
And I'll tell you right now, it is not my intent to be a lifetimer. I actually would love to go back to medical school and study at Oxford, and my wife and I want to start a school in Heber this coming year. I've got a lot of dreams and ambitions. I want to go.
How are you going to do that with your 28 kids?
Yeah, there you go. Maybe I'll adopt 100, and I'll just have.
Goodness, man.
You're gonna have to start.
I'm telling you, look at this. That eastern area of Utah in 20 years, they're going to have to do DNA tests to make sure that no Hokansons are breathing.
Stop. I do see a lot of growth around me in Heber, and that's what I think is going to be a big part of my role is helping those communities figure all that out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and and I'm at the point right now where I'm looking at it, especially on the state level, quit voting incumbents. And if I see someone who's getting a politician who's getting kind of forceful in their ways, that means they've been there too long. They're not responsive to their people. You may even disagree with them, but you don't order the police to come in and kill their First Amendment.
That's exactly right. And there's going to be disagreements. But the thing you do is you listen to them, You
Mhm.
get to talk to them. You get them into your office. You talk to them on the phone. You represent them. You know, like
Yeah.
that's the right path. Not this like, oh, this it's our way or the highway. And there are some of these bills that I do not understand why we're even considering. I mean, digital driver's license. Like anybody with a head, in my mind, should say that is a bad idea. Like we should not be giving. How many people are looking at what's happened in China, where you have a social credit score, you tweet the wrong thing, you text the wrong thing, all of a sudden you can't ride a train or take a plane, you know, like, do we really want our own people under that kind of authoritarian 1984 surveillance? How do you not see that these bills are marching us right down that same path? You know, like that to me should be a no-brainer, but I worry that some of these congressmen and senators at our state level are so out of touch with the real external world that they hide the idea that could be coming here, and they say, well, we'll just pass these because we'll never do that with this stuff. That's baloney. Like that's where it's coming.
Most of those senators are being honest when they say, I will never force a social credit score onto your driver's license. It's the guy after him that will.
Well, not only that, but look how easy it is as a representative in power to just snap your fingers, you know, and have police come and use violence on the people you find annoying.
Yeah, that makes it so that
makes me so uncomfortable.
Whoever called the police in on that made it so that his constituents did not have a voice. He essentially became their dictator at that moment.
Well, and it's kind of it's an uncomfortable thought that, you know, with my feelings about this, I'm going to be the person associating with all of those other representatives, and I'm going to have to stand up to them and say, guys, you know what, this is not okay. You know, I'm going to have to call a press conference or send an email to all my constituents saying, hey, we have other reps that are doing this stuff. We need to call them out, you know, and that's something Jason said going to Washington he's willing to do with the National Congress, is just tell people to stop. Tell people it's not right, you know, and it takes courage to do that. But I know that I'm not going to sit in those seats and represent people and watch my fellow representatives treat them with disrespect without calling them out for it and saying, guys, this is not our role.
Yep.
Hey, Vaughn, let me ask you a question. So one issue that's really important to me is that I have the liberty to use cryptocurrency as fluidly as possible. Would you consider yourself a cryptocurrency friendly candidate, or is that just not something that's on your radar? But
it's interesting. When I was in law school, I actually did one of my last papers was on cryptocurrency. I won't claim it was a very good paper, but I see financial markets and monetary policy as being one of the biggest keys on which, you know, the stability of our country turns on, and not just the stability of our country, but our freedom turns on, you know, and in my mind, any monetary tool that can make our markets work more open and free is something that we should be espousing. So in that sense, I'm all about cryptocurrency. The concern I have is that we're going to see federal regulation of crypto to the tune of like switching our cash system to a digital cash system that's completely centralized and controlled from a top down. And I'm thoroughly opposed to that.
Yep.
So I guess I have zero problem with monetary exchange through a cryptocurrency as long as it's something that's a free market and not like a centralized bank regulated, you know. And I do see the flip side of, like, I know people use crypto in some circles for exchanging services and goods that are illegal, right? And I have a problem with people buying children or buying drugs or whatever with crypto. I don't think that it should be used for that, but for any kind of legal exchange,
using the
I'm
crypto isn't the crime. It's the buying of the children.
Same thing with guns. You know, I'm very pro gun. I'm very pro freedom. So like, so
Mhm.
yeah, I guess in answer to your question, I have no problem with crypto as long as it doesn't get regulated as long as it doesn't become a weapon for the federal government to take away cash exchange. So
Yeah, I don't want to see a Fed coin pop up, because then it's the good thing about most cryptocurrencies is they have a control mechanism written into the base code of it that's what keeps it sound. And a Fed coin would have a control mechanism that is whoever the Fed chair is can, move a decibel and change what the world looks like overnight.
one, David, to further your question, I think that there's a lot of potential for crypto to become more mainstream in Utah and to have more transactions facilitated if we can at a state level come up with not a taxation or regulation system, but just a way to encourage our communities to espouse transaction points more, because that's the hardest thing with crypto is that you can buy it, you can own it, but it's hard to get, some flour or a gun or, like at your mom and pop store. So maybe we can, in Utah help make it easier for people to actually use crypto. And I think there's value to that because what it does is it allows our entrepreneurs here to access global markets in a way that they haven't been able to, and to make transactions simpler in terms of exchanging goods that usually have lots and lots of hurdles. I've been in the entrepreneurship world enough to know that setting up a payment system can be a real big headache, and getting payment for goods from one place to another can take a lot of regulatory steps and a lot of licensing and a lot of other things to make that transaction happen and keep commerce flowing. The more we can make that easy for entrepreneurs, the more our state's going to be prosperous. So
100%.
Yeah, I know there's like these small business development type state sponsored educational portals all over the state. I would love to see them learn how to help merchants implement Bitcoin payments and things like that through APIs on their web page and stuff.
It sounds like there's an opportunity for a young man to become a professor. Yeah. Well, anyways, we're coming up on the top of the hour, so kind of close it out. Do your final stump on this.
All right. Well,
25 kids. You'll call it quits it there. Prolific.
I know how to work really hard. I don't back down when people tell me to shut up. I'm not a perfect person, and I won't ever claim to be perfect. I'm an open book. If you want to know about my story, I love to tell it. I've told a bunch today, but there's a lot more. But at the end of the day, I love Utah. I love the people of Utah. I love this beautiful state, and I truly believe in our future. And I have 3 little boys, and the whole reason that I'm going to run this campaign to get into the office that I'm trying to get into is so that I can protect my kids' future. And if you want somebody that's going to fight for your kids' future and for your future, I'm your person. I'm going to fight like there's no tomorrow, and I'm not going to back down. And one of the things I'm going to fight hardest for is your freedom to teach your kids the way you want to teach them, to have a prosperous experience in your work in Utah, and to have security that if the rest of the world around us falls apart, Utah is functioning in a way that your family will have what it needs to continue living the American dream. I love the Constitution. I spent a lot of time educating myself to be capable of learning. I think that's a big difference. Is I'm not going to say I know everything and I know all the answers, but I know how to learn, and I know how to work hard to figure out problems. And I am not the kind of person who dismisses any perspective. I always put on my Facebook profile, I'm the love, hope, and peace party before I like officially affiliated as a Republican in my adult life so that I could get stuff done. I'm not going to be drowning out voices. I'm going to listen to everybody, and I'm going to work hard to bring people together. And that's something I do. But at the end of the day, I'm going to also stand for the principles of the Constitution and for freedom. There you go.
Good message. All right, everyone.
I like it.
Vaughn Hokanson.
Eric is my middle name.
Eric, hey.
Yep,
Good
Vaughn
middle
Eric.
name. I believe Vaughn promised a handstand as we outro him. So everyone, that's Vaughn running for Senate District 20. So that's you and Heber.
He's going to do it.
Probably some of you guys.
He's going to do it.
In Eastern Park City. Oh, look at that.
Damn.
Heck yeah. He can walk around on his hands. And that's going out to Vernon. So, take a look at him. Yeah, good job.
I need to get attention on the Senate floor. I'll stand up on a table and do a backflip, and then we'll see if they have a rule against that.
Dude, you need
no
to
one can compete with that.
Wear some really hard shoes so it sounds like a WWF match when you land. Or I think
I still have a video from a year and a half ago of me doing 16 back handsprings in a row on a grassy backyard. So
wow.
Is it getting harder as you get older?
8 now.
It's getting harder, isn't it? Like
A
you
little
feel
bit.
it in your bones
My
and
joints,
stuff.
they tell me, be careful.
Yeah, if I tried a backflip right now, there would just be blood and hair on concrete. But anyways,
well, hey Vaughn, before when we end the show, just stand by. I want to ask you something.
yeah.
Okay.
I got some help for you.
But yeah, we're going to keep trying to we mostly center around Tooele, but we do want to give this opportunity for everyone in the whole state to get to know people who are running. I think this is something that's lacking.
Especially if you're a freedom-loving candidate. I mean,
Yeah.
we know Vaughn because we associated ourselves a little bit with
Yep.
Jason Preston, and we find him to be a very freedom-loving candidate.
Yep.
So we wanted to reach out and give District
I really
20.
appreciate both of you taking the time to give me this little bit of voice to your listeners, and appreciate people who tuned in, and hopefully they will follow the recording once it's posted online. So thank you both.
Share it. You can take it. You can cut it up. Share as much of it as you want to get out there, because I do believe the key to us at least attaining the nation we want, and that's even the other side, the nation they want or the area they want, is we fall on the 10th Amendment, and then people get to know who they want to represent them. You know?
Amen.
And I think those are the keys. But anyways, Vaughn, thanks for coming on. It's a good conversation. I like the education, I believe, is our most troublesome thing coming, except for World War III, of course. Our most troublesome thing that we're facing right now as a nation. Our education system is falling short of the mark.
And it's absolutely my greatest passion is to help fix that problem.
Didn't Oregon just pass a law that they don't grade tests anymore or something
Would
crazy?
not surprise me.
And so what are you going to put out on the world? The teachers now only educate in how to march and maybe measure gasoline for the Molotov cocktail, and then the kid's going to go out into the world and the student, and they're not going to be able to perform, and then they're going to have to further their elementary and high school level education as adults.
We could talk for like a few more weeks about education, just straight through.
Yep. All right.
Very good.
Vaughn, hang out, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Let's thank Vaughn for having
Visit my website. This will be up there shortly, and it'll be live hopefully by tonight, if not by early next week. And it's vaughnforutah.com.
Yep. And Vaughn, when you check it out, I've got that listed on in the show notes, and I've also got it on the screen as people are seeing it right now. So if you go to the Happy Hour Facebook page, you'll see what the screen looked like. You're just seeing the Zoom. And so it's on there. I did go to the website, and I was going to ask him, when are you going to finish that off? Because it's in the, hey, I'm building a website.
Yeah,
page.
I know. It's going to be this weekend. I'm only clerking for two law firms, and got the 3 boys, and
Yeah.
Jason's set, so it's
Yeah,
going to get done. as soon as I can get it done.
Yeah, you're only running your guts out with 25 kids and law firms.
I'm gonna just keep that going. My wife's gonna love this when she hears that 25 kids.
I'm telling you, your wife should have looked over your shoulder and saw the line of Hokansons going up and over the horizon and saying, "Oh, I'm not ready." Yeah.
All right, you too.
But yeah, hey, thanks for coming on, Vaughn. And
Thanks for having me.
anytime you need to get a message out or whatever else you want to pop in, just give us a holler. We'll set something up. We can jump on within days.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
All right.
That's the show.
All right. That's the show.